Crooked River, Chapter 33. It was Amos who found me. I could have run off when I heard his stumbling footsteps coming through the brush and his voice calling out my name, but I didn't. The light was fading through the woods, and I sat at the foot of the big tree with my knees drawn up to my chin. My dress was covered with scraps of leaves, and my face was raw from crying. If Amos found me, that was his business. If he didn't, I would stay where I was and let the sun rise and set and rise and set, until I turned into a pile of bones and dust. "There you is," Amos said in a peculiar voice when he turned his head and saw me. Walking over, he set his rifle on the ground and hunched down next to me. "Laura's worried sick." I didn't answer, just kept my forehead resting on my knees, not looking up. Putting Laura's cloak over my shoulders, Amos sighed and sat down. "I know you feel soft-hearted about that Indian, Reb. Ever since you was toddling around the house, you always been that way. Never wanted to see us butcher the hogs or kill one of the calves. But it ain't gonna bring you any good to be that way. You understand what I mean? You've got to grow up and learn to see things different." I didn't answer, just kept my head down. Amos sighed again. I could hear him snapping little twigs between his fingers one after another, as if he was thinking hard. Without raising my head, I said, "He ain't guilty. I know he ain't guilty." Amos kept on snapping twigs. In an even voice he answered, "Don't be so foolish as to suppose that Indian John or any other one wouldn't put a tomahawk in your head or mine if they had half the chance." "The witnesses lied." I kept on, my voice rising. "Every last one of them lied. Me and Laura know the truth. I didn't watch any of my words, just said whatever rolled off my tongue. I didn't care if I got in awful bad trouble with Pa or Amos either." Amos sent a spit of tobacco at the ground. "Maybe they did lie, and maybe they didn't. I don't know, Reb. But you can't see that it don't matter. But can't you see that it don't matter? Look at a wolf, for instance. Even if you knew a wolf had never killed a sheep, would you let him stay in your sheep pen?" "No," I said fiercely, turning my eyes on Amos, "but I wouldn't kill him neither." Amos didn't answer, just snapped more twigs. Finally he said, "What if seeing what happens to Indian John sends the rest of the Indians out of here for good and leaves us to live in peace? Wouldn't you rather live that way, Reb, instead of always fearing the Indians, always worrying whether or not you or Mercy were going to be carried off and killed?" "The Indians was on this land before us," I said, thinking of that arrowhead I found in Peter Kelly's stories of the Chippewas fishing on the river where he grew up. "And that makes all this land theirs." Amos stared hard at me. "That what you think, Reb? That we ought to give the Indians all this land that we cleared and planted and paid for?" "I don't know," I answered stubbornly. "Perhaps." "Get up," Amos said sharply. "I'm tired of your nonsense." He tossed his handful of sticks away and stood up. "Get up and brush yourself off, Rebecca, or I swear I will carry you back to the house over my shoulder. I don't want to say another word to you, not one word." Amos was as strong as an ox, and he could have carried me all the way home like a sack of grain if he had a mind to. So I didn't have no choice but to get up and follow him. The woods were nearly dark as we tramped along the narrow, overgrown path. I could hear wolves howling in the distance, and Amos kept his gun at the ready, not saying a word. I followed a few steps behind him, and he kept turning and checking all the time to see that I was still there. In my mind, I knew I could not stand by and watch as my wretched Pa and the other men hanged a man who wasn't guilty of anything except being an Indian. I would run off back to the east. I would go back to Ma's old family in Vermont. Let them try to find me. Ma always used to say, "It is better to suffer wrong than to do wrong." But it seemed to me that suffering a wrong when you hadn't done anything wrong was worse. I couldn't forget the most awful sad look that crossed Peter Kelly's face as the verdict was read, and I wondered how Indian John must feel being sentenced to die for a murder that he didn't carry out. Perhaps it was better to do wrong than suffer wrong. And right then, as I stumbled on a root in the dark woods, the smallest idea began to flicker inside me. What if I, Rebecca Ann Carver, did something terribly wrong to help someone who was innocent. The skin of my neck prickled at the thought. What if I went against my pa and Amos and all the men in the settlement who believed Indians were nothing but murderous savages? What if I freed Indian John before the hanging and let him escape? I tugged the cloak tighter and around my shoulders. Perhaps that was what I would do. In the darkness of night, I sing and pray to Kichi Manitou and the other spirits. Lead me to a good fire. Hear my cries and answer me. A dream comes to me while I sleep. I hear the voice of the thunder beings, loud, 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 as Mide drums. I open my eyes and see a cloud, black as a crow, circling, circling above me. In front of me appears a man I have seen before in spirit dreams. He holds a palm of tobacco in his outstretched hand. Amik, he says to me, Amik. Why do you go about pitying yourself when the rushing wind will carry you across the sky? You must sing to the thunder beings, he said. You must sing, circle above me a cloud, circle above me a cloud, and the thunder beings, they will come. When I awaken from my dream, I know what the spirit man says is true. I know I will not die.